Welcome to Laying Fallow. I'm Donna Von Bruning. Today I speak with Gabriel Drabek. Gabe was a visual arts major at Savannah Arts Academy, and after spending a year at home, he headed to Georgia Southern University in Statesboro, Georgia. He graduated in May 2024 with a Bachelor in Fine Arts. Gabe is a talented painter and artist, so keep a lookout for his website coming this fall. Do you remember what your quote was?
I don't. I know you refined them because we weren't the best at,
Right, saying exact. But I knew what I didn't really refine yours. So yours is, SAA was the first school I have attended after being homeschooled my whole life. Every aspect of this high school experience meant a great deal to me. The teaching methods made the transition challenging, but the friendships made it all worthwhile. I loved playing soccer for the school team. I played soccer for years, but to represent the entire school, that was a great feeling. I especially cherish the camaraderie of a shared school experience, and I'm sad that I lost the highlight of the high school years. However, I've truly made friendships that will last a lifetime, truly. So, hearing that quote again, tell me how you feel about it.
A lot of emphasis on the friendships. I think I said that multiple times, which that was the case. And the thing that was so unique about my experience is that it was quite a transition from, anything prior to high school into high school because I was homeschooled. So I think that's why I emphasized the friendship so much, because I didn't have that community. It was just me and self-learning and my parents. And I had co-ops and whatnot, but I didn't truly make true friendships until I got to Savannah Arts. So I think that's why I just latched on. So yeah, no, that's accurate.
You said in your quote that the high school experience meant a great deal to you, which I think it does to a lot of people, but I understand why it meant more to you.
Yes.
How do you think losing those milestones affected you in particular?
Milestones as in, graduating, not being able to walk or...
Not just prom, graduation, and grad bash and all that kind of, those closing moments,
right,
but also the opening moments of the next chapter.
Yeah, which I think in some ways was even more important. I would say, at least in the closing moments, it felt like, graduation, although it's not necessarily personable always. I think as far as your mental, it's very necessary because it's that ending point, and you need to feel that, I think, sometimes before. I think the ending point of high school and the beginning of college, they're connected. So it's like, I think the transition from high school to college without that ending emphasis was really odd. It was sort of a blur to me when I look back to it, because I didn't feel as, and I know this might, not be true for everyone, but I didn't feel as accomplished, going into college. And, it's a major stepping stone. It was like not being able to visualize that stepping stone and truly feeling it. Although for me, and especially what you've done for us, I think we got to experience that more so than others. We got the bluff. We had the
I forgot about that. Yeah.
And, it was funny because I remember looking back at graduation with my family in my room, looking at the computer screen, and I see my name with my initial on it, sort of, an icon just sort of pass, and we clap. And so it was comedic, and I try to look at things more glass half full. So the graduation ceremony was not necessarily something I missed, but I definitely think I wish there was more of an evident stepping stone into college, just for my mental.
I'm going to skip around here a little bit because you just said something that kind of triggered one of these questions. So a lot of academics, like when I went and tried to do research about the class of 2020, most of it was about college kids and how they were graduating into zero jobs. Mm-hmm. There was nothing about high school. And I was just kind of floored because I thought, well, this is a lot of why I want to do this. The launch period, this 1 year is when you make lifetime friends,
right,
figure yourself out, grow as a person, shake who you were in high school. And so a lot of academics labeled the experience for you guys, this class of 2020, as a trauma. Would you agree with the word trauma?
I would actually, and like I said, I'm more of an optimistic person, I think, by nature, but I don't like to victimize situations I'm in. And I'm sure it has been trauma for others, but for me, I think, although not ideal, it has been in some ways very character growing. And I think without it, I wouldn't be where I am now. So I think there's certain skills, and my view on the world experiencing this has definitely changed. And it's original. It's different than anyone else's. So I think in a way we're sort of pioneers, and it's a big word. But I think filling those shoes, I think it either sets you up for extreme success or for failure. So you sort of choose that as the individual. And so I think it's less traumatic and more so of a character building experience.
So trauma's sort of a choice in this instance.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. How has the journey, or tell me about your journey of the past 4 years, like, was it what you thought it would be, or not at all, or somewhere in the middle? Because I know when you're in high school, you're thinking of trying to figure out where you're going to go to school, and you have a vision of how that looks.
Odd enough for me, I didn't have a huge vision. And I think that's because it was also new to me that I was embracing the moment. And I think I didn't pay much mind to what I was getting into. And I sort of already knew I was going to stay local and go to Southern. And so I didn't have big plans like everyone else or a lot of other people did. So what was the question again?
It was basically, did the journey of your past 4 years, I mean, you just graduated last Friday, like, was it everything you thought it would be? Was it not at all?
No, it wasn't. And I think that's good. It was unexpected. I think it added flavor. I've done so many different things in college. And the unique thing is each year was different for me. Freshman year I was in Armstrong. So I was in Savannah. I was living with Chase in the back of my house. We were traveling all over the Southeast and just traveling. That was our main thing. A lot of our classes were online at the time. And then sophomore year was my first time at college at Southern and Statesboro. And I lived with a totally different group of guys. We partied a lot. And, there was not a lot of emphasis on my academics, and my grades weren't the best then. And so I got to experience that side of Statesboro.
Kind of like a rebound.
Definitely.
Because you didn't get the freshman year.
No. So it's like I lived my freshman year, in my sophomore. And then I began to refine what I wanted to do, junior and senior. And then I started getting into a ministry there, and I met people through that. So I think my friend groups in college were just so vastly different. I had my ministry people, I had the people that partied a lot and that were very spontaneous. And I had friends in frats and sororities, but I wasn't a part of one. And I had my friends, that I've made here in Savannah that were all over. And I would travel to see them. So it's definitely very different than I expected. It wasn't as linear as I think most experiences.
So talking about all these different friend groups, how do you think your personal relationships have been affected by the pandemic? And not just you, but even people around you. Do you think people held on too long because of comfort, or let go too quickly? Or were they even in a position to make new friends? And who do you consider your friends now? So you can kind of piece that up. Like, did you find that first year you guys held on to each other tighter because you weren't going anywhere?
Yeah, no, I think for comfort reasons and for security, we didn't think we were going to make new friends. So why not hold tightly to the people we were friends with? So I think that stunted our growth socially, but then it also strengthened our friendships we currently had. So there was positives and negatives to that. But when things opened up again, I think it was easy for me and we were all distanced. We were in different locations, my friends from high school. So we were sort of forced to then make new friends. So it turned out fine, I think.
Do you think there are some people that that kind of stunted them? Like, they didn't bother trying. Like, you clearly reached out and put yourself in situations, new clubs, new different social groups. Can you think of anyone that it just...
I think, and I don't know if I want to name names, but I think there's some that were in relationships, and mine ended abruptly. So I think because of that also gave me sort of a push into the social world. And I think some that had relationships and that were so strong because of that COVID area as well, they were very close. They also depended solely on each other. And I think that has, kept them from really branching out. Yeah, no, I would definitely say the people I know that, and not all, but the people I know that were way too focused on their significant other, per se. I think I would count them as.
And they stayed there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So who would you say are your friends now?
Well, my inner circle, my close friends, I still think are, well, I believe are my friends from here. You know, Grayson, Dalton, Sam, Simon, Kip.
Yeah.
I see Joseph once in a while. I wouldn't say he's in my inner circle. You know, Simon. There's
that
external,
outer, yeah.
You know,
the floaters.
right, the floaters. My friends in Statesboro, I have like 2 to 3 really, really close ones, but it's not as broad as my friend group here. So I would say, yeah, my inner circle here, and then just a few other close friends.
Do you think that inner circle here remained so because you guys had that extra year trying to figure this out?
Yes, I do.
And would you consider it a gift or a handicap or both?
A gift.
Yeah.
A gift. I also think you facilitating a place for us to get together as well has been beneficial. I mean, I think guys tend to lack in reaching out to each other at times, not because we don't care about each other, but I think we're not as, I wouldn't say multitaskers. We're not as, and I wouldn't say scattermind, but we're just not, we don't think of these things. So I definitely think you have pushed us and inspired us to act upon those feelings and to reach out a bit more.
Switching gears a little bit, talk to me about loss and grief. So what was your greatest loss from 2020 to now? And what was your greatest gain?
My loss. Does it have to be in the year of 2020?
No. Mm-mm.
Just between then and now?
Mm-hmm. And it could be anything. Like,
I honestly will say my biggest loss and gain was my 5-year relationship. I don't think it was necessarily the healthiest, but then also there was a lot of positivity in it. And that was my first love and my first experiences. So it's like, I think losing that has been incredible grief, especially in that moment, but then also post losing that relationship, it's opened my eyes to so many different things, and I've developed as a human being because of it as well. So it's odd that that's both my loss and my gain.
not really.
But my gain, or you don't think it's a
No,
loss
I
at
don't
all?
think it's a lot. I don't think that's odd. I think it's exactly how it's supposed to happen. Like,
Sure.
out of that kind of loss, you become the kind of person that you want to be.
Right.
You learn some things, you check some boxes,
Yeah.
push yourself in a different direction
Yeah.
that you probably wouldn't have gone.
Yes. Yes.
You know?
Exactly. Yeah, I could imagine if I was still in that relationship. A lot of things would be different.
Oh, for sure. For sure. So the past 4 years have kind of been thrust all these social fractures to the forefront of life here in the United States. So like Black Lives Matter, Roe versus Wade, the war on Hamas, anti-Semitism, all that kind of stuff. Tell me about your experiences with any of these. Has it made you any more empathetic, or is it the opposite? Have any of these impacted your life at all, or are they just fringe things?
They haven't impacted me severely and personably. And that's not saying that I have my head in the sand. I think I'm blessed to be in college in the United States and to have, an abundance of resources. And I tend not to be so political, but I think it's affected me only through others I've experienced that. I think college students take it upon them to be activists and to immerse themselves in politics. And I'm not saying that's wrong, but I've definitely seen that on campus, and that has somewhat affected me. But it hasn't ever been me that has made that choice to stand up for something or to. It's affected me very slightly.
Well, I mean, I ask because there are some people who, for instance, went to school in Atlanta.
Sure, yeah.
And it affected them greatly.
Yes.
There was fear for them. And so that's why I ask it, because, some people, for example, just even the experience some people had at Georgia State versus people in the bubble at Georgia Tech.
Right. I'm also in a bubble at Southern. So
right.
I think I would be more in line with the people at Tech. We see these things, and that somewhat affects us, but we're not experiencing them.
Right.
So it's not a personable relationship. It's just that I'm taking a back seat and watching it. And sure, I may have opinions on these things, but I wouldn't say it has deeply affected me.
Some of the people made comments, and I'm curious if you agree with this, that a lot of these kids, like you said, in college, take it upon themselves to be activists or whatever, take up causes that I was surprised at how many of the people I interviewed thought that they were ridiculous, that they were too privileged and too bored, that they should really just look at ways to improve the world around them and not. And I just thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah. I mean, it really depends. It's very situational. And it depends on the individual. If they're, I respect someone that's truly learned, in the subject they're supporting or debating. And I believe in free speech. And, if they want to make a statement, then great, But if I can tell that this person's just doing it off of emotional whim or it's to fit in with other people, then I'm not really supportive of it. I don't think they have anything backing it up, which is sort of pathetic to me. Like I said, it depends.
Yeah. Tell me about the experience of being a high school senior and a college freshman in 2020 that made you either A, more flexible as a person, and or B, clung a little tighter to traditions. So yes, you didn't have graduation. For some people, what I mean by that is they just didn't give a shit about those kind of traditions anymore. They didn't mean anything, those markers. And other people, they leaned more heavily on them.
Yeah, so I think in times like these, when everything's up in the air, I think instead of fighting it and trying to live exactly how the people prior to this event have, it's foolish, and I think it can cause more stress than good. But then also I think there's value in trying to keep some kind of structure during this time, So I think like say graduation recently, I haven't experienced walking across the stage and having my tassel turned, and I think that was good. At least I got to experience that, and I can speak of that time fondly. And I think I cling on to certain traditions like that, but I think there's also a part of me that is very open to new things and new experiences, and I'm not necessarily one for tradition. So yeah, it's a mix.
Did walking last Friday mean a lot more to you, or were you like, oh, so this is what it's like?
The funny thing is the buildup was, intense, but then once you walk the stage, you hardly remember, you hardly remember it happened, and then it's done. So I don't really put too much emphasis on it, because it's, and the funny thing is I don't think that graduation is very personable at all. You have 800 students plus. And you briefly walk across the stage, and now you don't even have a real person, speaking your name.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So we voice recorded our names, so that they would correctly have the pronunciation, and then they would extract that, put it into an AI. The AI would then learn how to say your name correctly, and then it would say it over.
You are kidding me.
Yeah.
So like an AI bot said your name.
Said my name. Yeah.
Gabe Drabek.
Yes. The only personable experience I had was shaking the president's hand.
Yeah.
That was about it. So,
wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Mm-hmm. No, didn't like that, huh?
Didn't. No.
No.
I see that it's more practical, maybe, and like you get the names correct. And speaking of tradition, I think traditionally there should be an actual person.
Yeah.
You've had sleepless nights of studying and hard work and sweat that goes into a 4-year undergrad degree, and you have an AI speak your name as you cross the finish line. So
that's kind of shocking.
It is.
Yeah.
I think we are the first graduating class to experience it.
You should let them know you thought that sucked. Let's talk about social media a little bit.
Yeah.
So a few people have said, like, Gen Z, whatever that's worth, they feel like it's two distinct Gen Zs. That you guys, the top half, like 24, 23, 22, 21 maybe even 20, that social media was not really a thing for you in middle school. And even in high school, like, Instagram was still, like, just random pictures. Mm-hmm. Snap was just kind of, hey, it hadn't blossomed into what it is now.
Yeah, no.
And so you guys were mentally protected more.
Yes, I agree. I think that in that time, especially middle school, I didn't really have social media, but high school, we didn't like develop a social media presence. Like we didn't have a character we were showcasing. It was simply for contact, contacting others and maybe networking, but it was, just random posts. It was very randomized. Now it's an extension of these people. It's like the clothes we wear, the car we drive. Mm-hmm. It was an extension. They're showcasing the best self. And that was never the case, I think, for me in early high school or whatever, keeping up with the Joneses. I don't think that was the case at all. So that did protect us.
Because you had this kind of experience, and I don't know if you know anyone or really see anyone in a younger generation and their experience. How does that make you think you'll handle it with your kids? If it's even a thing, then.
Yeah, if it is still a thing, I think, I'm sure I'll have certain rules in place, and I think having so many social media platforms is also wrong, because then it's like you have several different faces you're trying to upkeep. And for example, I think TikTok is terrible. I wouldn't want my kids to have TikTok unless it's for some professional use. But yeah, I wouldn't want them to have social media until high school, at least. I mean, I think that's guarding their young, malleable minds. They should be doing things outdoors. They should be working with their hands, and using that valuable time instead of sitting on your phone to learn new things. And I think we substitute that with social media, and it really halts our growth, especially at that young age.
Mm-hmm. Tell me why you think TikTok is so bad.
I'm not a conspiracy theorist, so I won't go into that stuff.
Right.
But I do think it's engineered to show you exactly what you want to see. And I think it can be, if improperly used, an addiction. And I've seen it. And I will admit, even when it first came out, I had it. It was, there's a code, and it times, how long you set your eyes or keep, a video on. Mm-hmm. And it continues to play those, and it's a whole algorithm. And it's literally created, it's genius. It's created to keep you engaged in that app. And I think just whatever the content is, which some of it's terrible, but whatever it is, just having your eyes on your phone for that period of time, or for such a long period of time, is not healthy. So I know that can be true for maybe other apps for other people, but personally, TikTok has been the worst.
What does the future feel like for you now? Like, what feels important after the experiences in your life these 4 years?
There's several things. I think one being continuing those relationships, which will be hard because you're distanced. And also, we're pursuing careers, so we don't have a lot of time on our hands. So it'll be the first time where we really don't have any time on our hands, I think. Hopefully. That means we're doing the right thing. But
yeah, no scheduled breaks where we all know you're all coming home for Christmas or whatever.
Right. Mm-hmm. So I think that will be a challenge. And then also finding a job. I'm in the job portal right now. And, as an art graduate, it's not as linear as other jobs. So it's like I'm just sort of trying to make connections and applying to several different places and different positions and seeing what I can get and piecing it together. And so it can be fun, but it can also be stressful. So I don't really have a good idea of my future.
And that's fair. Does it feel hopeful, though?
Yes, it does. And I think it's because I have such a great community and family. I feel well supported. I don't feel like I'm just left out to dry, which, that can also be a crutch as well, because I think sometimes, you need to move out of the house to really feel how it is, what it's like to survive, and that pressing, survival instincts. So you're trying to look for ways to make money, and you're more, I guess, proactive, and you've got that edge.
You're not too comfortable.
So, so I think that's something with the comfort I have available, and with such a supportive family and friend group, I think I have to make sure and check myself that I'm not falling too deeply into that.
Talk to me a little bit about dating.
Well,
and sex. So one thing I've heard a lot over and over is that, like, your generation doesn't have sex, especially like my generation did when we were your age.
Yes.
Because we were a lot of fun.
Yes. No, definitely not. And I think the thing with sex is, I can only speak as a male. I guess.
That's what I want, that perspective, your perspective.
My perspective as a male. And these are not necessarily things I struggle with, but that I see is definitely like pornography. I think, there's, you can get into the science of it, but you're not truly experiencing what sex is. And it's a fraud. It's a fake. And you're setting yourself up for failure when you find someone that you're intimate with. So I think that is one cause. As far as dating, I think dating apps are terrible. I think everything should be in person. I agree there are successful couples that come from dating apps, but I just think that, why try to eliminate the in-person beginning? I mean, I think I am a bit of a romantic, and it's like, I like to romanticize the beginning. That's not something to take for granted, the whole honeymoon stage, and you're supposed to be building this compatibility with each other in person. Another thing is, I think that with sex, the reason that there's not much longevity to relationships now is because people have sex too early on in their relationship. Mm-hmm. And I'm not even talking about, in a religious sense, like before or after marriage or whatever. Just in a relationship, I think people depend on the physicality of it, and they get close and they find this physical compatibility that they latch onto, and they don't back it up by emotional compatibility.
A friendship, yeah.
And a friendship, which I think you should develop that first, and then sex is an added,
like a deeper
connection.
Level. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and if you do it the opposite way, you have sex first, then it's going to break at some point. Mm-hmm. You're not going to have any of the deeper emotions, mm-hmm. linked with that person to really sustain a relationship. And that's with the whole, hookup culture, that you have sex with someone and then, you don't have an emotional bond with them per se. And then you just look on to the next person to do it. And it's a continued cycle. You're just trying mm-hmm. to keep your head over the water. So I think that is also an issue with our.
Do you think your age group is leaning more towards that, away from the dating apps and looking to that spontaneous, like, meeting people, and whether you meet them at a bar, at church, or, on some volleyball team you joined in a rec league, or do you feel like it's trending that way? Or
it is definitely because COVID. I think COVID definitely fed the dating sites, because I guess that's really all you could do at that time.
Right.
And I think people got comfortable. But now I think there are a select few that are realizing that it is so much better to meet these people in person. So I think it is trending in a good way.
As a white male or guy, whatever, do you find it easier or harder? I mean, how do you find it approaching people now? I guess what I mean by that, I'm not really sure what I mean by that, quite honestly.
Yeah. You'll see how I take the question.
Yeah, I'm not really sure, other than, like, because of COVID and you weren't approaching strangers, and then everyone has this online persona, to do it in person, you got to be willing to be rejected and pick yourself back up. And that's tough. Yes.
I definitely think, if you're trying to, look for a platonic or a romantic relationship, mm-hmm. regardless, I think you have to go in with the mind that this may not work out, and that's completely fine. Mm-hmm. I think too many people get bogged down after rejection, and I think that's just the nature of things. Mm-hmm. Rejection is very common. That shouldn't necessarily eat away at you. So let's say, like, in the dating arena, I think I see this a lot with men, and it's if they're rejected, a few times, they kind of call it quits. And I think that's too soon.
And go back to Pornhub and just give up.
Just give up, yeah.
Not realizing it's not personal.
Yeah.
It's just a numbers game.
Yes. And I also think, like, before you go out and look for these relationships, I think you need to look inward first, because you're also presenting yourself to another mm-hmm. person. You're not just looking for these ideals in other people. It's you as well that you want to give. Are you doing well physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, and working on financially, working on yourself there, and then you're a better candidate for the dating field. Mm-hmm. And then you go out there, maybe you'll be rejected less, but even if you are, you at least still are confident in yourself. So
yeah. Do you know who Prof G is? Scott Galloway? Did you ever listen to him?
I've heard of him, but I'm not.
Yeah, he's a podcaster. Yeah. He's a professor at NYU Stern, and mm-hmm. he's real popular in podcasts and all that kind of stuff. And he is very big on this kind of thing that particularly white men, but like men in general, are just kind of being pushed down and not giving opportunities, and that the world, gaming, social media has all made it too easy for them to just hide in the basement and not go out. And he's like, you got to get out there. You got to go to a bar. You got to throw a couple back, maybe one too many sometimes.
Yeah.
Liquid courage to get out on the dance floor or do whatever. It's just kind of interesting if you ever listen to him. That's kind of where that question comes from.
Yeah. I think the gaming and all that has affected, I know we're talking about white men, but it's affected so many people.
Yeah.
I mean, that has been terrible. But I think sometimes I feel like as a white man, sometimes in building relationships, I have to walk on eggshells, and sometimes I'm presented with a double-edged sword.
So there is this phenomenon called a quarter century crisis. Have you heard of it?
No.
Okay, so it's when you turn 25 and you have this idea in your head, like whether it started in high school or whatever, of what your life is going to look like. Okay, you graduated college, get your job, married, not married, relationships, all that thing. And it is a period of like looking back, like you worked so hard to get here. And it's probably not what you thought it was going to be. Mm-hmm. And so it's a period of like uncertainty, you're disillusioned, you're questioning all your decisions. It's very common. It's a very common thing. Mm. Do you think that your particular class of people, you guys are all 22, maybe a couple of you are 23 right now, will face that just because of what you went through graduating? I mean, I guess I'm thinking you've already learned
Yeah, I think it's inevitable, but I don't think because of COVID, it's going to be any more extreme than what people have experienced in the past. Because in some ways, I think we already experienced that uncertainty through COVID, so maybe we're better prepared for that time. But that doesn't mean I don't think we're not going to experience that time. Mm-hmm. I think we will in many different ways, some more than others.
Right. And kind of lastly, what do you think people misunderstand about 22-year-olds today?
That's a good question. I see why you saved that one for last. Misunderstand. Wow. I think people are so different now. And let's just take 22-year-olds that I think some are underestimated and some are overestimated. And sometimes the underestimated affects the overestimated.
What do you mean by that?
Meaning, I think there are some 22-year-old screw-offs that really give a bad rep to 22-year-olds that actually have great potential. And I think that an older, wiser person may look at a 22-year-old and just generalize and say, well, this person really does not know what they want. And I think there are a select few that actually do know what they want. And I think that's a great thing. That's something to cherish. Even if it doesn't end up that way, I think it's great at 22 to have a plan. Although most don't, those that do should be recognized. And it's not a bad thing.
So what you talked about, it's great to have a plan or whatever. So the last thing I want to ask you, or you can tell me, is what is the one great thing you plan to do with your life?
I could say success or, maybe a good job but I think to maintain a genuine character and to treat others well. I think as a Christian, it is my job to spread the gospel. And I think, I do plan on going on missions trips, medical missions trips. I want to travel the world. I want to help. I'm fulfilling the Great Commission. That's what I believe. And I believe there's a lot of people worth saving. But I also think that a great goal of mine traditionally is to have a family and to raise kids. And I think that's quite the challenge now. So that is a goal of mine.
Thanks for listening to Laying Fallow. Be sure to listen to the rest of the episodes, and to learn more and see the portraits from both 2020 and 2024, head over to my website, www.donnavonbruning.com, or to my Instagram, @DonnaVonBruning.